Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hey everybody, and welcome to another video where I rank the last new and recent releases that I've read. Okay, so this one, I hadn't realized it had been so long, which, I mean, I guess it hasn't been too long. It's been about 2 months, and I do these about every 6 weeks to 2 months because of how many recent releases that I read. So I have this time 40 plus, 41 to be exact, of course, recent releases that I've read. So these are books that I read an arc for and or read them within like the month that they came out. So, you know, within that time. So that means all of these have come out since January basically. And I rank these for you based on like my rating. I start with the lowest rating or any DNFs that I have and go through the 6 stars because I do have 2 6-star reads so far this year. And yeah, sometimes I get really in detailed in these and sometimes it's a little more brief, but I'm excited. I love doing these videos because I just love hyping up these authors, especially ones that were like new to me or surprises or ones that I've been highly anticipating. There's always that as well. And I will have links to all of these down below. So if you want to purchase one of these, it helps both the author and me as well. I do make a small commission on Amazon links, and you'd be surprised that even when there's lots of people buying a like $2 to $4 ebook, you know, it stacks up. It helps me be able to buy more books, me be able to pay my taxes, buy food, you know, all the things we use money for, right? But anyway, that is a great way to do it. You can also use that link even if you're not going to purchase it. It'll take you right to the Kindle Unlimited and you'll be able to get, whether there's a KU, an audio, or a physical copy you want to get, that link takes you to all of them. And it doesn't matter which one you pick. So anyway, let's go ahead and get in. And this time I'm very excited because I color coded it to make it easier, because what inevitably happens when I do this is that I go back to the old school way and I write down all the new releases, because then I number them and put them in order of from DNFs all the way to 6 stars. And I just find it easier to put it all on one page, because I can flip through my spreadsheet, which I do still have my spreadsheet here because, again, some of these books I read 60, 70 books ago. So this helps me remember character names and things like that for you. But I go back like this. And what inevitably happens, though, is I always miss something and put it in the wrong place. And this time we color coded it. And I think that's going to help me a lot. So we are going to start with actually a book that isn't a DNF at all, but as I've shared previously, I work for Noelle Adams, aka Claire Kent, which I have been loving. I love working with her. It's a dream come true. But for all of her releases from this place forward, I don't give them a rating because, number one, I of course want you to read everything she writes, not only because I think she's a great author and a wonderful person, but obviously her doing well helps me do well, right? So there's definitely a bias that's going to be in there, right? I'm not going to disparage my author, though I still give like a pretty honest review about them. You just have to know what my bias is going in. I always try to share that. So I will just tell you that there was a new release from her and kind of what it's about, but I'm not going to tell you my rating. Therefore, I can't rank it within these because then you'd know where it was. So this is not a DNF, but I am going to talk about it first real quick. And it actually came out today, the day I'm filming it. And it is just a little novella called In Flight. And this is by her Noelle Adams name, which I'm really hoping to get more of you guys familiar with, because if you like how she writes Claire Kent, these are, of course, that same style of writing, but they're all contemporaries, all more on the pretty much like upbeat, simple things. They're just regular people with regular romance. They're very like trope centric is kind of how she writes, but they're so fun. Also, Noelle does have direct sales that she's working on getting spun up. So this novella is available directly on her website. I'll link to her website, of course, and of course still the regular links to Amazon and everything. But as a lot of authors, you know, and as we've talked about on this channel, being diverse in your sales is the best way to withstand any boycotts that might happen to Amazon. If people know to come directly to you for them, also people who are then boycotting Amazon have another place to go as well. So anyway, that's my little plug for this one. Oh, I need to tell you what it's about. Well, this is a fun little novella about this couple that meet, well, they're not a couple yet, but these two that meet on this basically commuter flight. They're going from, I can't remember the first city, but they're going down to Savannah, Georgia, and like he works there like during the week, and then is going like home on the weekends. And it's the opposite, I guess, for her, but they're like on the same flight. Like her sister's going to be getting married in, I think, 2 months, and she's helping with it. And so her family's pretty well off, and they've basically booked her flights for the next 2 months. So they end up basically in the same seats every time. He's working on a part-time project where he's needing to go commute to this place to work. And so they end up being side-by-side buddies. And first it starts off as kind of like annoyed stranger until slowly they start to get to know one another on these flights. And as their time to needing to take these flights comes to an end, they have to decide if they're going to continue on. Now, one kind of like, I wouldn't call it a trigger warning, but just like a trope to know, they are both kind of in relationships at the start of this. But again, they don't jump straight into relationships with each other because they're only seeing each other for like a couple hours every weekend. But it does progress in a really sweet way. So anyway, that's In Flight. Again, no rating to share for you, but it is a recent release that just came out. So now the one that was officially a DNF was this book called Ravenous by Alana Rachel Parker. And I was very sad to DNF this one. I'd like to say I would get back around to it, but it's probably not likely. This is supposed to be kind of a gender swapped Little Red Riding Hood. Like we have a heroine who is a shifter and our hero who is like this redhead, red bearded guy. There's a very complex explanation to this world, and I just couldn't care to give it to you, but I will tell you kind of like why I DNF'd it. This is also, it's kind of in a dystopian place, and our heroine actually gets like sold into kind of like, I don't know, forced labor, indentured servitude, I don't know, but it is kind of the hero who's responsible for getting her captured, if I'm correct. Now, he does that for reasons because he needs to protect his people, and I think he's in this deal where if he turns in others, it's then better for his people. I don't know. There's supposed to be kind of these like reasons why he would betray her in that way or whatever, but also he doesn't really know her when they did. But anyway, I just was not getting gripped by these characters, and it was during a time where I had, you know, I always have a ton of arcs to read and things to get to, and I've really been trying to read more fantasy this year, so this was one of those that I tried. It did not work for me. We will have more as we go through this video that really did work for me. I'm really happy with how much fantasy I've read this year, but Ravenous didn't work so well. Okay, so that was DNFs. Next, the lowest other rating that I had for new releases was a 3.5, which I gotta say, it always makes me happy because if my lowest rating is a 3.5, which is still a pretty passable rating for me, it was probably a pretty decent book. So for that, we only have 2 of those. So one of them is Between Smoke and Shadow by Bree Wilde, and this was another fantasy that I tried, and this one is so in this one we had Rune and Herrick, and Rune is actually a like indentured servant. She's basically a slave to this kingdom, and I believe there's like magic involved in all these things, and we have these 2 princes who are kind of competing to become the next ruler. Now I believe Herrick is the hero, yeah, and Rune is the heroine. And Rune, what happened though is that her and her father were indentured servants, and she and her father were actually trying to create like an uprising type situation. And anyway, her father gets blamed for it and ends up being killed. And the way they kill people, I won't even go into it right now, but it was pretty intense. And they didn't kill Ruin, but she basically took on all of her father's sentence on top of her own. And so she's basically indentured for like 100 years or whatever, something like crazy. So she's never going to be leaving there. And that happened like in the past. Now we're at present day, and she's trying to work with the rebellion again. And maybe that's not quite what happened in the past. It might have been a completely different crime her father had. Again, it's hazy. I just know that her father was murdered in front of her. She took on all of his sentence. She's never getting out of there. In the current time, she's trying to work with a rebellion because she has nothing to lose. She's going to be indentured to them forever, and she doesn't think that this is right. I couldn't really explain the type of magic that was in this world either. You know, that's kind of why I never really had a clear picture for what it was. Now, this was a debut author as well. So there were things that were intriguing. This was a standalone as well. I believe she will write more in this world, but there was kind of an HEA for the couple. That's also why this wasn't rated higher for me. But anyway, Herrick, he doesn't like his father, but he also doesn't want his brother to become the next king because he is a twisted guy like their dad. So Herrick basically has to be at the same level as his brother in like strength and ability, because they're basically going to have a battle royale to see who will be the next king. And so he needs to be vicious enough to beat his brother, but also what will that do to his soul if he matches like for like type of thing, right? So tricky emotional situation, as it were. But yeah, and these two end up falling in love when I believe Ruin is made the handmaid to a woman who's going to be courted by Herrick, I believe. So that's what happened in here. So anyway, as you can see, there were some things that just weren't like great about this for me. It was unclear. And then when we got to the end and these two are together, there's a lot that's very unsolved in the world. So again, I assume there's going to be more coming in this world because it's also a bit of a dystopian society as well, maybe like magical dystopian. And it wasn't clear to me how they have an HEA, even though they were together at the end. Though I believe in her notes, it won't be them, that's the next couple. So that was a horrible explanation, but that's what you get. That's why it was only 3.5, because I didn't connect with it very much. Okay, then the other 3.5 though was one that I was intrigued by, and I gave this one 3.5 mostly because it's a novella, right? It's really tough for me to give a novella above like 3.5 or 4 because there's usually enough for it to be a fun time, but also not enough for me to be fully engaged. And that was kind of the case with this one, though. This was the debut historical romance author. This novella was called The Merchant Match by Jenna Bigelow, or Bigelow. I don't know how we say it. I haven't heard Bigelow. I don't know. But this is actually her newsletter read. So if you sign up for her newsletter, you'll get access to this one. She has the first book in the series is now out, and this was the like novella to tease people into the world. And this is a ancient Roman set historical romance. It's not a fantasy. It's not even like, it wasn't super dark. You know, people will have different interpretations about that. Like we're going to talk about another book that is in ancient Rome that's definitely dark, but this one is gonna, like, there'll be lots of politics in this. There will be like indentured servants and there will be tough rules for women. But even within this one, like nothing about it felt like icky or awful. But our heroine in this one has actually just received her freedom. She was a house slave and basically a forced like mistress. So she's not even really mistress. Like she was a sex slave almost. Well, let's just call it, she was a sex slave to the master of the home. She actually has a son by him who's 16. And anyway, she's finally been able to exit servitude. But the family, you know, and the father of her child has not paid her out what she deserves. And that's putting her and her son in a very tough place. And it may force her into more, you know, using her body for their safety if she isn't able to get this. So she actually spends what money she has to dress herself up, and she basically crashes a party that is at this that she knows they will be at to try to like beseech them to pay her. And this is a novella, so I don't want to pitch the whole thing to you, but if you're curious about an ancient Roman historical that wasn't like overly dark and it didn't have like, you know, rapey vibes to it or that, I really suggest this one. It was very sweet, as it were, because she ends up meeting this widower there, and he of course thinks she is a lady that he just hasn't met because she's dressed up nice there, and he's very interested in her. Now, he isn't interested in just a fling with anyone. He is looking for another wife. His wife had died in childbirth many years ago, but he was never close with his wife. That was an arranged marriage, as most of them would be. And he, you know, very much wants to find someone. And our heroine doesn't think she can be good enough for him. Or that she wants to trust again. So that's all I want to say about this one, because I've talked a lot, but some of you who love historicals and you're looking for new historical romance authors, I want you to try her, because I do have the next book on my TBR, and also the cover for the next book was shared, and it is so stunning. So I've only read this novella by her, but there is a full book out. And I want to get to it so soon. I don't know when I'll be able to, but I want to get to it so soon. And then the one after that, look at these. I'll put the covers up of both of these. But yes, these are ancient Roman historical. So I gave a 3.5 to The Merchant Match, but it wasn't because it was bad. It's just because it's a novella. And again, sign up for her newsletter and get in on this if you love historicals, because I got to tell you, there were no other new historicals on my list of recent reads, and I'm upset with myself about that. There will be some in the next one because I will get to them, but there we go. Okay, now we're going to get to the 4-star reads though, because I did have, of course, quite a few of those, as we usually do. We have 17 of those ones, so we're going to get going. I will not talk as much about all of these ones. I just went in more detail for these ones I rated lower than I should have, but we won't do that for all of these, because now we're getting into some that, I mean, I genuinely love them, or like genuinely like these ones, and so I've talked about them much more than some of the others. So we had a 4-star read that was Lessons with the Mothman. So yeah, this is one I can talk about pretty quickly. So this was book 3 in the Monster Smash Agency. Been very much looking forward to this one. This one we have Elias, who is a freelance consultant to Monster Smash, and he is a very rare moth fae. So he's very special. He's never been in love, though he is very curious about the emotion. Or no, he's not interested, but he has a new curiosity of it. A lot of his friends have been mating with their clients. That's what the other two are. And so he's very interested in it. And then there's Victoria, who is looking for facts, not feelings. And she wants to understand why the monster species are so much more satisfied than humans. And she thinks it might have something to do with intimacy. And so she's willing to explore physical chemistry with the Mothman, but she is also being like holding herself apart from him a lot as well. So there were some very interesting aspects to this one. Of course, if it's Catherine Moon, we're going to look into different kinds of kink with this one. This one had like voyeurism, of course, because she's wanting to, you know, see those things. So this one though, there was lots of BDSM experimenting. There was breeding kink, there was CNC kink, there was restraint, there was toys, there was a bit of somnophilia. There was also her really urging him to not try to make her come all the time. She likes to just enjoy the feeling of sex as well, which I always think is an interesting look at things. And it's also very much goes against the nature of Elias, because not only is he a sex worker who his job is to bring pleasure to people, but that is just something that makes him feel satisfied to satisfy his partner. So there's lots of dynamics that were interesting to look into with this one. Okay, then there was The Apple Tree by Julianne, and this was one that I gave it 4 stars because there was a lot of beautiful things about it, but it was a really tough read for me because of some of the trigger warnings, which were not listed. And I come back to this, like, I'm an advocate for trigger warnings no matter what type of book it is, okay? But honestly, especially for a contemporary that is not listed as a dark romance, because in general, I still think we should give an idea of what the content is when it's a dark romance. At least if I've picked up a book that says dark, I'm not going to be shocked if there is some, you know, assault that shows up or some mention of like drugs or whatever. Again, I prefer things to be marked because that's just how I am at this point and what I advocate for. But when it's not, I take it upon myself as like the reviewer to share what they are. Now with both books in this series, honestly, Julianne doesn't list her trigger warnings for these things, and I am a critic of that, okay? And I'm allowed to be, because the trigger warnings in said book of The Apple Tree included some pretty serious types of self-harm. There was alcoholism in a underage person, or not underage, a barely aged person, like alcoholism in like an 18-year-old. There was accidental harm to a child in here. The child is okay, but it's a scary situation. And so there's also institutionalization in this one, which you guys know that, well, maybe you don't, but like that's one of my actual, like, it's very hard for me to read someone being institutionalized. It's very difficult. So these were things that a bit got in the way of a story that I was otherwise really liking, and I did. I've given both Sunday Morning and this one 4 stars, but this one I really wanted to like more because it was a forbidden dad's best friend's brother. It's a weird mix, but it's a single dad. He's a coach at the high school. She's 18, just graduated. It's the summer before college is supposed to start, and she's been kind of the forgotten middle child. Her older sister was more popular. Her younger sister is really good, and you know, she does get into a bit of trouble, but she ends up getting volunteered to like be a nanny for this guy, and they get along so well. Before there's ever like, yes, there's attraction. He's like, wow, I need to not be attracted in my nanny type of thing. But there also was just like this attraction of like, wow, this girl is fiery, and I see a lot of who I was in her, and I loved that connection. It felt very genuine. But then, yeah, things went downhill and it got pretty intense there. So anyway, Jen, we cannot talk this long. Holy shit. Okay, you guys, I'm sorry. This is already going to be probably over an hour. I need to get moving. But yeah, so just, you know, look at some reviews that have trigger warnings if you're interested in these. This is another one where like she is the preacher's daughter one, but I liked it. I had a good time. Okay, then there was The Moon and His Tides by Gianna Darling. Now, this is one that I gave it 4 stars, but it does have a potential to move up, okay? I am always hesitant about books in trilogies. Now, here's the thing too, I want to say I trust Gianna Darling, but it isn't too far removed from there being big gaps of her books coming out, okay? She is really rolling now, it seems. You know, she has this trilogy coming out this year. She's starting Dark Mafia one that's supposed to be coming, that fairy tale retelling. And it looks good, but I'm still nervous because it's not that far removed from where we had years of silence from her. So fingers crossed. But this was the first in the new trilogy from her. This is Sebastian's trilogy, and it starts off when he's 18 years old and he becomes a chauffeur for this wealthy couple. He actually becomes it for the woman first, who she's actually the older woman in a relationship. She, I believe, is like 8 years older or 6 years older than her husband. He's a famous actor. She is kind of the one behind the scenes orchestrating his career. And so we have Savannah, who Sebastian actually meets first, and they have this crazy chemistry. Well, this may seem like it would be a cheating romance, and I would still call their first interaction kind of cheating. It is, but Adam and Savannah actually like to share men. So Adam becomes very intrigued as well when his wife tells him about the hot young man that made her come in his car. And he then goes to meet Sebastian, and Sebastian is not bisexual or gay. He's never thought about that at all. He's only been with women before, but there's something about Adam that just draws him in, and he's like, whoa, what is this? And when Adam offers to share his wife with him, if he's interested in maybe becoming their full-time chauffeur, he agrees, and so he moves in with him. And then this is their story from there. And it does end on a cliffhanger. We have 2 more coming, but this is a like bi-awakening for Sebastian. And he is thrust into this relationship where honestly, he is kind of the low rung on the dynamic scale and like what is happening, right? So it's very fascinating. It's a very compelling beginning to a trilogy. And again, I'm starting out hesitant with it. I gave it a 4 star, but that could definitely elevate when I see what the through line of this trilogy is. Okay, then there's Pretty Broken Dolls by Bree Wiley. I won't get into this one because I have talked about it in multiple videos since I read it. I really enjoyed it. This is an age gap, a hidden relationship, a office relationship. I've talked about it in my romance, in age gap romance. I've been talking about it nonstop. So just know that one is 4-star, and I'll link a video that maybe has more details if you want it. But this was a new to me author. Very much a winner for me. Very emotional, very intense. Trigger warnings in this one for self-harm as well as BDSM exploration. There's toys and spanking and orgasm denial. So it just has all the goodies in there, okay? So just be prepared for that one. Next up, there was Hudson by Samantha Skye. This one was one that I kind of rounded up for a 4-star and maybe wouldn't have normally. Like, it's just okay. I'm actually not signing up for any more arcs in this series. The first one was, I can't even remember the name of the first one, but this series is all right. It's an age gap, small town, a little bit of suspense in it. And this one is Lacey and Hudson, and they are, he's a doctor actually, and a widower. He's a single dad. There is like some praise and degradation in theirs. And like, this was just, again, this was sweet. I enjoyed this couple, but also they're very forgettable. If his name Hudson wasn't the title, I wouldn't have remembered anything about these, but I gave it 4-star because it was an arc and I kind of rounded up there. So didn't hate it, but also could have been better type of thing. Okay. Then there was Iron and Embers, which I did get a lovely ARC copy of this. I am very pleased that I did. This was my first book by this author though, and I believe people are saying this is Helen Schreier, not like how look, I don't know. But anyway, this was my first book from her, and this is a spin-off, The Ashes of Thesmar, from the original series, I think the Kingdom of Thesmar or whatever, which I didn't read yet. I will be reading that series because I loved this one. But this is a spin-off, and it was about a poisoner whose name is Ren, and our hero whose name is, I think, Torge, and he is basically put as her bodyguard because she's going to this like alchemist school. So yeah, alchemist, poisoner, storm wielder, and she is one of the heirs to this kingdom. I believe the previous series is like her sister, and her sister is now maybe the leader of their kingdom, and she is currently like the heir though, because her sister doesn't have any children and there's none of that going on yet. And so she goes to this school to continue her alchemist training, and Torge and her have actually had chemistry in the past. They had a almost before, but things went wrong and they basically became enemies, and she actually killed one of his previous charges, right? Bodyguard. She killed it. It actually caused him to get like a demotion because, you know, his charge died. And now for his redemption, a few years later, he's actually sent to protect her. Not him alone. There's a few people sent with to look after her because, again, she's an heir to the kingdom. And then on Ren's side of things, she is trying to learn as much as she can about alchemy. And there's the school that she's in is this academy she's in is so interesting. She's paired up with 2 other alchemists, and we begin to learn, you know, there's like challenges they have to do. They're trying to graduate at the top of their class so they can get the best like positions and everything. And I just really loved it. I love the rich characters in here. I loved the romance. I really did. I thought it was a beautiful slow burn. And it was one of those that like, they're not fully enemies, but their animosity is like well documented and with good reason. So it didn't feel unnecessary for them to dislike each other. And he's basically, you know, her live-in bodyguard as well. Like there are other guards who rotate, but he's like with her almost all the time. And they even have like adjoining rooms that share a washroom so he can protect her. And she's always trying to slip the leash though, and there's a few times that she puts herself in danger by, you know, slipping him something so she can escape for a while. So she's a naughty girl, we'll just say that. Okay, then there was The Broker by Nikki Sloan. This book is book 6 in the Nashville neighborhood, and this has been such a great series. I mean, I don't know that it's over. She never really tells us if there's more until she tells us there's more. So I'm always excited to get another one. But this one was a, oh shoot, what's the heroine's name? I have it. Where's The Broker at? Okay, so this one is an age gap. This is dad's employee, basically. They have a kind of sort of one-night stand in the beginning of this. And by that, I mean, like, they have a one-night stand. Our heroine isn't currently interested in penetrative sex. So that's why, like, I'm saying almost, but I don't want to say that. Like, they get each other off. It's super hot. She doesn't want penetrative sex, and he's okay with that. He's like, we're getting each other off. This is fine with me. I love it. And I thought that was a really cool way to show it. Her reason is she's like, I don't want to have penetrative sex with anyone until I am into them again, but I still want to fool around. And so if you're cool with us getting each other off, like, I want to. I just don't want that to be the end all be all. And he's like, great, love it. Let's do it. But anyway, then they find out who each other is. And it's like, oh no, he needs this job. She doesn't want to upset her father again by dating someone inappropriate for her, seeing someone inappropriate for her. But then the father, to step things up, actually gets her to become a cleaner for his employee, because it's a whole thing. She's kind of going through a bit of a punishment, even though she's an adult and shouldn't be punished. She needs to prove to her family she can be, like, responsible again. It's a bit condescending on her dad's part, but you'll see if you read it. But it means that she's now cleaning the hero's house, and she ends up being there when he does a few sexy things that she decides she wants in on. So that's what we'll say about this one. It was a good time. It's definitely not my favorite in the series. My favorites in the series will probably still always be the pool boy and the, honestly, probably the frat boy. I really love the frat boy one. It's really good. So, oh, I forgot to grab this one, but I don't want to get up again. I do have a copy of this one, though. There is The Crimson Forest by Louise Damgard, and boy, this one was intense. This is an amnesia story where our heroine wakes up on the run, and she gets rescued by a guy named Asher, who is the king of the... Oh, shoot. See, this is where I needed the book. I think he's the king of one of the lands in this place, okay? And they're at war with different, like, lands. And so if she keeps running, she's going to end up in the clutches of a different kingdom, and that won't be good. But she doesn't know anything. Like, she doesn't remember anything, who she is or why she's there. And so this King Asher is trying to look after her, but she doesn't know what's going on. And so he basically is having to teach her about the world that she's in. And this is a world that, you know, she doesn't know a thing about it. She's told that she's a human. Being a human is actually very rare. Most of the beings are these different types of shifter creatures. And she starts to fall in love with Asher, who is her rescuer, apparently. But things are a lot more complicated than that. At one point, she actually ends up captured on a small island, and she's captured there with a creature this being named Ren, who we know is actually an enemy of Asher, but her and Ren must work together to survive this land that they're staying in, and some feelings start to develop between the two of them. So this had a big cliffhanger, The Crimson Forest did, and as I've kind of explained, it is a love triangle. Now, by the end of this book, like, we know where things are going. I just don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it still had a cliffhanger where I was like, wow. So this was a new to me author. I don't know if she was a debut. I believe she may be debut as well, but it was good. It just... Again, it's one of the same way I felt about the trilogy. There's too much left up in the air for me to just dive in and be like, yes, for sure, I love this, you know? Okay, continuing on a little bit quicker with some of these, as I said, there is Little Goddess by Layla Frost. This is the third book in her, what was it called? Is it called like the Black Diamond series? I don't know. It revolves around a casino and organized crime as well. This one is a why choose. There is some MM happening within it. There's also some daddy kink happening in there. Our heroine has escaped a cult, but they're wary of her when she gets hired at this casino, because they actually have one of their loved ones who was forcibly in that cult. And so they don't know how to feel about her when they find out she's also been involved with that cult. But anyway, this ends up becoming a Why Choose, and it was okay. It was a good time, at least. And yeah, age gap, BDSM, DP, MM scenes, all the things in this one for sure. Okay, then there was Shattered Innocence by Sarah Kate. This one was just as audiobook that I read this one. This is a novella. It was a part of the Rose Auction series that was a collab with other authors. But this one is actually a FFM. It's a Cinderella retelling. There's a virginity/marriage auction that happens in this one. And it's actually a Cinderella story where Cinderella's in love with one of her stepsisters and they both hate her stepmother. The other woman's like mother, her stepmother, and the stepsister ends up getting her ex-boyfriend to agree to buy the Cinderella character in this auction, which they believe is just a marriage auction, but it's actually like who you marry, you must consummate it within a certain time because it's a virginity auction as well. And if you don't, then she goes back up for auction. So now, this ex-boyfriend is going to be fucking the girlfriend of his ex-girlfriend. So it's a big complicated thing. And they're all going to end up together because it's a FFM. So it was Sarah Kate. It was spicy. It was hot. It was great. Then I had another menage. Crazy. I read a lot of those this last month. A couple months anyway. Two Birds, One Stone by Stevie Sparks. This book isn't even out yet though. I'm a beta reader for Stevie Sparks, so I won't go into too much more about it, but this one's going to be like connected with mafia. It's a bodyguard, a business guy, and his wife. And so it's a marriage of convenience that happens, and then they all fall in love with each other. And yeah, that one's not coming until mid-April, I think, is when that one's coming. Okay, The Last Guy on Earth by Serena Bowen was also 4 stars. This is the next book in like her hockey series. It's MM, and this one is actually a second chance romance between a coach and a player. They both actually went to the same college and were players together, and then they went their separate ways. Things broke off. Nobody ever knew that they dated each other at all. They both were kind of in the closet type thing. And they still are. And now one of them is a coach of a team that the other's just been traded to. And now they're forced to confront each other after all these years. And the one is the one who's still a player. He is also a guardian to his nephew. So he's also kind of got single dad vibes going on. And yeah, this one was a really good time. I enjoyed this couple so much. I really love reading Serena Bowen's books. They're very comforting to me, whether it's her MM or MF ones. They're very comforting books for me. Okay, then there was Beautiful Exile, which just released. This is book 4 in the Sparrow Falls series by Catherine Cowles. This one is Arden, who is the kind of like recluse sister who has a lot of trauma and she's trying to keep to herself. She's also an artist and she lives on a house on her brother's property. Now, her brother is currently kind of like borrowing his home to his friend who is going to be building in the area. And so now he's like staying on that land and she's really not into that. She doesn't like that at all. She doesn't want anyone in her space, but she's going to be kind of worn down by him eventually. These are like romantic suspense. So like this one was okay, but I could have liked it better than I did. It's not my favorite in the series, but it was still a good time. Okay, it was a good time. Okay, then there was Hidden Roots by Cleo Evans. This was an MF, very kinky, also small town suspense. These were enemies who then are fake fiancés and explore kinky times together. That's probably the best, quickest way to explain that one. This whole series has been romantic suspense and has been pretty fun to read, but the suspense elements are always a little like, whatever, you know, I don't know. It's one of those that suspense you'd think would make for good third act conflicts where you don't have to have a breakup, which is the case in this one, but also it can be like, if an author doesn't balance that the right way, it just feels like cheap because you're adding stakes to a story when they don't really fit right. I don't know. This one was okay, but I've read better from her anyway. There was Ruthless Bonds by Danny Antoinette. This was a new to me author that I found on NetGalley, and I just read this one last week. We're getting up to present time now in the 4-star ones, and this one is a kind of a second chance. They actually meet, I believe it's supposed to be like 6 years in the past, where they both kind of actually at night and they actually have sex. She was actually a virgin when they have sex. Not that that's the end of the world or anything, but it means she never forgot him. And now, 6 years later, he's the head of the Bratva in their area, and she kind of runs afoul of their organization. And when he gets brought in to torture the person who, which normally he wouldn't be called in to torture someone who had wronged them, right? But he gets brought in because he's been keeping kind of tabs on her. And when the time comes, he steps in and basically is like, I will forgive your debt if you now owe me a favor. And that favor is going to escalate to the point of, I need a wife, and I want it to be you. So I enjoyed this. I very much want to read more from this author, and I thought this was done very well. And then the last 4-star to share was one I actually just finished yesterday, which is Dark Horse by Maggie Rodden. That's another one that's out today, the day that I'm talking about it. And this is the next book in the Quiet Horseman series. The first one was Bull Rush. This one is Dark Horse, and this is about the eldest brother in the family. And he was a cowboy turned crime boss, is how they say it. Though his criminal enterprise looks a little different than some we've seen. He mostly owns a casino in the area and, has some dirty dealings, which have led to kind of like a territory war going on. And then our heroine is actually the younger sister of someone who was his dear friend. And he was actually her guardian for about 6 months when her brother died and she was still underage. And now it's like 10 years later, I believe, and he's actually her landlord. She owns a bar, she's a business owner, and she actually owes him rent. And to make sure she keeps paying him rent, there are some extracurriculars she's had to take on, which include being a cam girl. And because, again, he keeps tabs on her, he ends up being at her house one day while she is out. He's there to, again, he's a landlord, so he's there to help make sure I can't remember if it's her washing machine or is her air conditioner gets fixed or whatever, and her computer is open, and he's able to, breaks into her computer and sees what she's been doing, because apparently she would just leave it open to the sex site that she's working on, and he would easily be able to get into it, but whatever. It is her home, and she wasn't expecting him to be there. And he discovers what she's doing, and he's like, no. You're not going to put your body on the internet. If you were going to do that for strangers, you're going to do it for me. So I will forgive some of your debt every time you send me some pictures and everything. So that's the start of things for them, which, absolutely delightful, right? Okay. Now, let's do the 4.5 stars. There was Crazy Imperfect Love by Samantha Christie. And this was book 3 in the Montana Brothers. And this one is actually a let's make a baby together. Our heroine is actually the older woman. Our hero is actually someone who's left, I believe, 3 different fiancés. And so he's definitely a pariah in town. And again, she is a bit older than him and is wanting to have a baby. And first they have a one-night stand together and it goes pretty badly, and he really wants another chance with this one-night stand, and she agrees to give him another date. But then he ends up discovering her stuff about how she's looking into having a baby, and he decides pretty like abruptly but also very strongly agrees that he's like, you know what, I am struggling to commit to a woman, but I want a family, I want a kid, so maybe I can be the one to provide you with a child, and then we'll share them together and be parents. So this is a baby deal story. So there you go. 4.5 stars for that one. For Fillies and Monsters by Landon Hill, this is a dark cowboy romance where our heroine is actually the boss and our hero is a ranch hand who starts for her. But what she doesn't know is that he's actually been stalking her for almost a decade, and he's an ex-bull rider, and he finally is like retiring from that life. Can't remember if he's fully retired. I think he is. But he becomes her ranch hand, and she's really struggling to handle her family ranch. There's a lot of people in town who don't want her to be the one taking it over. her father was very abusive to her. She believes he's responsible for her mother's death as well, but he did leave her the farm. And so she's back there. She has nothing else as an inheritance but this farm. And so she's going to try to make a go of it. And again, our hero becomes a ranch hand for her, but he's also her stalker. And so now he literally has her within his clutches. And so, yeah, this is very kinky, bit of suspense going on. A lot of the kink involves things while she's asleep and him like watching her and doing things around her while she's sleeping. You can get more details by looking up the trigger warnings for this one. So there was Under an Endless Moon by A.L. Jackson. This is book 2 in her Crimson, is this one? Oh no, Moonlit Ridge series. And this one is a best friend's little sister. And this one is, she ends up needing kind of a bodyguard because some men who had previously hurt her, I guess they've been, I can't remember if they've been seen around or seen in the area or what's been up with that. But she ends up needing protection. There are things happening to her flower shop that prove that someone is after her. And one of the things I really love is she has a tattoo that says, "I will make it to the sunrise." And this is kind of an ode to what happened to her when they were young. And so this is a bit forbidden because it is friend's little sister, but they also are the best of the best, right? So just a reminder too, what this biker gang does, this biker group, is a band of brothers who actually helps women and children escape from abusive situations. So they used to be like 1%ers, and now they've kind of let that go, but they still will come together to help with that. So there's someone who does the actual extraction, there's someone who does the fake IDs, there's someone who gets them like the money, and they each are a part of that operation. So this is a very kind of like heartwarming like biker situation. And again, with A.L. Jackson, I always suggest the audiobooks. And one final thing, this is the first and only A.L. Jackson that I have read. Well, okay, that's not true. She has a new fantasy series, okay. But this is the first and only contemporary A.L. Jackson I've read that is not a single parent, okay. Neither one of them has babies in this one, which I thought was a very bold move for her because she loves writing single parents, which I love single parents as well. But it's been kind of a joke, and I have teased her at times when we've talked about how they're all single parents because she loves that so much. Okay, then there is Here and Now by Corinne Michaels. This one was book 2 in, what's the series called again? Ember Falls. Ooh, she has all the names of them in here. I've heard she's added a 6th book as well, though. So there's only 5 listed, but there's going to be a 6th one. So anyway, this one is a single parent and the principal of the school. And this is also a woman on the run. And they're in this small town. Her brother has actually set her up there. So her brother is actually in like security and things like that. And his firm has helped her escape from her ex multiple times. And so they've landed in Ember Falls. And this is Miles and Penelope. And yeah, her son is in, I can't remember if he's in hockey or yes, he's also the hockey coach for her son as well as the principal at the school. And she's working at the coffee shop in town, and he actually doesn't like coffee, but he continually goes in and tries to like coffee so that he has a reason to talk with her every morning. He also is her neighbor. They don't live too far apart. I think I have the little map here. It's so cute. Of their like homes, the Anderson and the Miller homes share this road right here. And this was just so sweet. This is pretty low angst overall because Miles, once he is into her, he's like, I'm going to protect you no matter what. So there is some struggle with her afraid to tell him, you know, how she got to this point and why they're at this point. And it takes a while for her to feel safe enough to tell him her past because she's also like, me and my son may need to leave at any time, and the less you know about us, the better. But eventually, you know, Miles and his connections, they're like, we're going to make sure you're safe. We're going to take care of you. So, love to see it. Then there was On Love Rose Lane by Samantha Young. This one is book 1 in a new spin-off series from, it's also a second generation series. So yeah, this one is on, what's the series going to be called? I forgot. She didn't write it because this is the ARC edition. I forgot what the series is going to be. Well, it is the spin-off series too on Dublin Street. Was the original series, and this is like the family of this. But this one is childhood enemies to lovers. They're now neighbors, and they become fake dating. She is a social media manager, and he is a, does he play football? I think it's football. But yeah, they are fake dating, and they're also agreeing to have sexy times together while they do. And this is also a bit of a second chance because they became kind of enemies when they were young because of a misunderstanding that happened. It has to do with their families, actually, what it was. But they are also getting a second chance, and they finally kind of dig into as well, like why things split them up when they were young. So, love to see that there. Okay, there is also For Wrath and Redemption by Britt Benson. This one I just read pretty recently, so we won't go into that one too much, but this one is a bad boy rock star and his now like PR manager, and this is a redemption story for both of them. So they've been kind of villains in other people's story, though I don't know the full back context specifically for the hero's journey in it. But from what I've read, like the heroine was definitely kind of villainous in her brother's romance, I guess, in a previous series. But this is the Hometown Heartless, and these two are going to get a second chance. This one also has a lot of like darker themes, including self-harm, drug use, addiction, loss of a parent. And it does also have a accidental pregnancy. And when that's going to happen with someone who has those type of struggles, it's going to be a lot. Like, it's going to be a lot. But I was very moved by this couple. I loved them. Okay, there's Mountain Boss. This one just released. And this one is S.J. Tilly. And it is just like it sounds. Our heroine gets a job with a boss on a mountain. This guy actually owns like a fishing and camping and like retreat kind of up there. And he thinks he's hiring a male maintenance man, but he ends up having hired a woman, and he just does not want the temptation of a pretty woman around, so he's going to try to chase her off from wanting to work there. But he doesn't know that our heroine has nowhere else to go, so she is going to make this job work. And so he definitely gives her a hard time in the beginning, but they very quickly like fall for each other. And it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be very horny because it's S.J. Tilly, so be prepared for that. And then this one comes out in a couple of days. I am a bit ahead with a few of these, just so you know. This one is Undeniably Enemies by Jay Salmon, which is the fifth book, I think, in the Irresistible Billionaires. And I believe there will be a sixth one. But anyway, this one is a best friend's little sister. It's also a workplace romance. He is the head like ER doctor. Well, one of the head ER doctors, and she currently is like a pre-intern there, but she's hoping to work at that hospital eventually. And yeah, the whole family, like everybody knows everybody, and they've always acted like they hated each other. And we discovered that that is because there was a one-night stand the two of them accidentally had, where he took her virginity and then finds out who she is and is now like kind of punishing her for it. Like they both punish each other for it. But they also can't forget it because it was an amazing night. Okay, now let's get into some of the 5 stars we have. We are getting there, but it's going to be over an hour. I'm sure you guys will know that when you started it. Hoping I'm convincing you to read some of them, right? But now we'll have my 5 stars, which I'll have talked about these ones a lot, so it goes faster as we go, actually. Okay, there's Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. I don't feel like I gotta go too much into this one because everybody and their mother knows about it, but I always read these books the day that they came out, pre-ordered a copy of it, super disappointed in the quality of that, but the story I loved. I love the audiobook. I love this world. I don't think about it too critically. I just enjoy myself. Are there some story things that are a little bit out there, yes. I actually did a live show on my friend Jess's channel, Honest Fiction, and of course a lot of things were open to my eyes, but with these, I don't care if it's cheesy, it's all about the vibes for me, and I have a great time. And I don't expect groundbreaking work from this. I expect fast-paced, fun time, good stuff, and that's what I get. And it's also okay if people want to be really critical, because you can expect the highest quality, like you can be after that. I'm not. And so I'm not disappointed when I read these, because I get what I want out of it, right? Okay, then there was an absolute surprise to me. That was High Sticking the Heart by Marie M. Now, when I read this, this wasn't a new like book release, but it was a new audiobook release. And this was my favorite read in January, so I'm bringing it up here anyway. This isn't the original cover, it's actually this one. And I do know that this is on Hoopla in some places. I couldn't find it actually on Audible when I was trying to share it with one of my friends, but she ended up finding it on like Hoopla there. But this is another one where there is a one-night stand between these two. Well, not quite, but it's Ariella and Dalton, and they have this fun like date together after she like pretends to be his fake date to help him get away from his ex, which was a cool like switch up. But again, in a switch up, she is actually the new coach for this male hockey team. Not the like head coach, but the like weightlifting coach, the like training coach. And he is actually the owner's son. And Dalton is this absolute gush of a guy. Like, he is the epitome of a golden retriever hero, and our heroine is definitely a black cat. She's also very much, they have very different cultures. She is Latina, and so her family is very involved in her life, and so this is her chance to kind of break away from them. She doesn't want to own to anyone. She doesn't want a man controlling her life, and sometimes that type of scenario can put me off if the author is pushing that narrative too hard with the woman. But I feel like it was very well set up for this heroine because of where her family is, because of the industry she's in, and because of the job she does. It's very important for her to have her ducks in a row. And when there's photos from this night out that these two had before they knew who each other was, the only way to save her job is to actually pretend that they were already dating each other. And I guess, you know, if they're already dating, then she won't lose her job. It was a weird hoop that gets jumped through in this, but whatever. The point being, now they're having to fake date for her to keep her job, because she's like, I got this job. My family doesn't want me to be doing this work. I'm not going to lose this job and have to go home with my tail between my legs because I rescued you from your ex-girlfriend. So now you're going to pretend to be my boyfriend. And he's only too happy to do it, because he definitely wants to turn this fake dating into real. And the way that he goes about doing that, of being so devoted and so kind and just completely there to support her. And then in return, like, it isn't just all one-sided. Like, she really helps build him up, and she wants to get to know him. And there was just so many beautiful things about this. So High Sticking the Heart was a 5-star read for me. The listen was even like fantastic. So definitely get yourself a copy of this one. Ooh, it's getting really dark outside. I think it's gonna rain. It's freaking me out a little bit. Okay, there was When We Burn by Kristen Proby. This is the first one in the Blackwells of Montana. This is my special edition from the, what's it called? Novel Grounds. It's a Novel Grounds, so it's this. So anyway, this one is a best friend's little sister. It's also a neighbor. It's also my little girl's teacher. So our heroine is from a very messed up family where her brother basically raised them all because their father was a disgusting pig. And now the father is dead. He's been dead for a while. And the story of that older brother and his romance is actually the last book in the wilds of Montana. And the Blackwells are friends with him. And so, well, they're kind of friends with everybody. They were more friends with a different family than with them. But anyway, Danny Lexington is now back in town, and she's going to be a teacher, and she's neighbors with her brother's best friend, who's also the fire chief and a single dad. Even more complicated, he had this child with her like enemy from high school, who's an absolute bitch, but she's thankfully out of the picture for the most part. And then Bridger, he is ready to like make a, like he wants her now that she's back in town, and she's so good with his little girl. And what I loved is that this whole book is him being like, I'm gonna win her over prove to her how much I want her and go for her. And the whole town is in for it. It's like in on it. So just love that about these two. And again, audiobook's really great. Kristen Proby has she's always on fire for me. I just love it. Okay, there was Mr. Swoony by Piper Rain. This one, Mr. Swoony. Oh yeah, this is the Runaway Bride one. So this one, yeah, at the end of Mr. Broody, we saw this happen at the wedding. There's a runaway bride, and these two actually end up, he kind of helps. Well, she was already going to stop her wedding, but then he shows up to break up her wedding. And they run out of there together, and she ends up actually moving in with him. But because she's just getting out of this relationship that was really toxic, even though they have this great chemistry, she's like, I'm not ready to just date someone. And he's like, that's okay. I'll give you a safe place to live. I'm not going to push myself on you. She actually has like a bucket list of things she wants to do now that she isn't with her, fiance, because he was always very like dismissive of her dreams, just that kind of prick or whatever. She was with him basically because her father thought that he was good, and when her father died, she wanted to like honor what he liked, but that's stupid. Like, don't do that. And anyway, so now she's living with him, and he's helping her complete her bucket list, and eventually some things on the bucket list get kind of spicy. So we're gonna figure them out, Then there is Finding Home by Lauren Rowe. This one was very emotional. This is another kind of like rock star situation. And he knows that he has a daughter, this drummer, and he's actually in rehab in the beginning of this. His mom has died of I think she had cancer, and he freaked out, wrecked a hotel room. And so now he needs to go to rehab for a certain amount of time. Otherwise, like, he will possibly have to like I can't remember, or the insurance company won't keep covering their tour. That's what it is. So he's really holding it up for everybody else if he doesn't get his act together. And he ends up getting a call from his lawyer that the mother of his child has died. Now, he hasn't had anything to do with this. He pays quite a bit of money monthly and yearly for his child, but he hasn't wanted to be a part of her life. And in fact, actually, he did try just once. I won't spoil everything. When he found out his mother was sick, but he was rejected for that. So he was like, okay, fine. I understand that, I guess. And what this is that the grandfather of his child is trying to get control of her so that he can get that money that the hero is paying monthly. The hero's name is Caleb. And Aubrey is actually the best friend of this woman. And she is now the guardian of this little girl. And there's this whole thing where technically, like, if the parent, like the living parent, still wanted to do something about that, they can. Set in stone when there's still a living parent, and there's not like a ruling against him being the parent. And he has the best chance of becoming the legal guardian of this child, over the grandpa. Because he learns this guy is shady as fuck. And so basically Aubrey and Caleb have to partner together to help raise the kid, and he needs a sober companion if he's going to leave rehab to start looking after his kid. Otherwise, he can't leave it if he's not proving he's staying sober, and Aubrey agrees to do that for him. She actually helped her friend get clean before when her friend found out she was pregnant, blah, 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 all these things. So they're going to raise the baby together. I love this book. Obviously gave it 5 stars. The narration was fantastic. It was duet narration with Andy Arndt and Sean Masters, and it was fantastic. And I also really, really, truly loved Aubrey's parents, who, again, they're not the grandparents of this little girl, but they want to help so much. And I adored them. Like, this book was so sweet, you guys. Like, it was so sweet. I loved it. Okay, then there was... Where is it? Here it is. There was Wild Side by Elsie Silver. Yep, this was a 5-star read. Loved it so much. This was Reese and Tabitha. Reese is actually a professional wrestler, which was really fun to read. And this is another case of the actual parent of the child has died. It was Tabitha's sister. She lost her struggle to drugs, and Reese is actually made the guardian of the little boy. Wow, that's very similar. These 2 books are very similar in that case. And Reese thinks that Tabitha's family didn't care about her or care about the little boy, but really Tabitha's sister had kind of been lying about that. And so Tabitha is absolutely pissed that Reese was made the guardian of this little boy, because in a way she actually blames Reese for her sister's death. Again, we won't go into why that is. We'll leave that up to you guys. But it's going to lead to them actually getting married to protect the little boy, because Reese, he's not actually a like Canadian citizen, and he works in the United States. So there's only so much he's able to go back and forth, and he needs to like be married. So yeah, this one is a marriage for the little boy, and it's just adorable. Okay, again, this video is getting very long. I talk very much in depth about this book in the review when I read it, and I just love it. I think that Elsie Silver has tapped into something amazing, and that's a book that I may still reread in December, though I gave it 5 stars because it has the potential to go up. I was just really trying not to just give Elsie a 6 star on every single thing, because there's a couple of authors, and one, you know, it's going to come up again here in this video, that I just instantly give them 6 stars. And I mean, it's my channel, they're my books, I can do that if I want, but I just really was like, do I like this one more than Wild Eyes? I didn't know if I did, but the more I've talked about it with friends and on my channel after reading it, I kind of think I do. So I may still reread that one in December as well, and then see if it's a 6 star at the end. Okay, there was The Way We Score by Tia Louise. This is a second chance romance, accidental pregnancy. They were high school sweethearts, and they broke up when they both went to college, different colleges, and now they're back in the same town for one of their, I think it's his sibling, her friend's wedding, and they end up getting pregnant. And now it is a second chance romance with a baby on the way. And it may be, you know, life correcting itself, because maybe they always were supposed to be the ones having each other's babies. So it's great. Or having a baby together, I mean. Okay, there was Firebird. Now, this is the one I'm talking about that is ancient Roman, and it's a very dark romance. One thing I do want to report, since I have read this one, I talked about how Bramble wasn't putting trigger warnings anywhere. They were kind of holding back on that, and it was something that me and many, many other reviewers, because if you look up the reviews for this book was really suffering from reviewers who did not know what they were getting into, because this is a dark fantasy romance set in Rome. There is a master-slave situation. There's captive, kind of. We also see situations of rape, not between these two, but we see many graphic things. And this book is being like promoted everywhere, which is wonderful, but trigger warnings were not being shared. I would like to tell you that Bramble has added that to both the Amazon listing, and it will be in future printings of the book. So that came from, you know, both reviewers sharing how they feel and kind of being like, you know, you're hurting this book. So Bramble wanting to get ahead of the algorithm by not putting trigger warnings in, because they say Amazon will hold it back because of that. I say this book is still being promoted everywhere. The Amazon algorithm can only hold it back so much when it's being put through Fairy Loot and through Bookish Box and is getting special editions all over. It's more important that you look out for your readers, which is something that Juliet wanted to do, right? Again, she's my friend. I'm a bit biased, but I just want to tell you that since I filmed that review, which I gave this 5 stars because, as I say, I knew it was a dark romance and I knew what the content was, but there was no trigger warnings for that. There now are. So that doesn't help people who've read it before, but also when you're a reviewer, it is part of your job to read and then share that. And that's what a lot of people did. Whether they are a professional reviewer like me, I mean, you know what I mean, or there's someone who got an early copy and was like, what the fuck is going on, right? But anyway, this is a fantasy. There are dragon shifters who rule Rome. They are very vicious. They are evil in a lot of aspects. And then we have our heroine, who is technically at that time, any people that weren't Romans were called barbarians. It's not a anything particular to what their race was or culture was. It was just if you weren't a Roman citizen, you were considered a barbarian, you were considered an outsider, and you were considered less than them. You could become a citizen, become more. Anyway, we don't have time to talk about all of that, but the point being, our heroine is actually a witch, and she gets captured by the Romans in the beginning of this, and the hero, which, I mean, it is dark, as we said, is a dragon shifter, and he's a general, and he's actually also the, like, nephew of the Caesar, who, again, is a dragon shifter, and he's evil and sadistic. And he saves her from being raped when they capture her. And to keep her safe, he makes her his slave and makes her his body slave, which means she's sleeping in his room. But he's not forcing himself on her as that. He's really putting on the facade of what is happening. But anyway, there's a whole lot more going on. There's a lot more to him and what he's actually trying to do within the government and things like that I don't want to spoil. But if you love dark fantasy romance, you're okay with the themes that I mentioned, this is going to be killer. This is out April 8th, and I hope you'll give it a go. There was also Merit by Devney Perry. This was the fourth and final book, I believe, in the Wildcats State series. This one is Maverick, as well as his like childhood frenemy. What's her name here? Stevie, is it? Where did I put it? Yeah, Merrick and Stevie. And their families are actually best friends, though they've been kind of, as I said, like enemies since they were 10. But Maverick's mother actually has cancer, and so that really pulls their two families even closer together. And Maverick's mom actually literally makes a dying wish, and that is for Maverick and Stevie to try to date each other. So they agree to do that for his mother, and then start to realize all the things they have in common that they've forgotten about through the years. So it was a warm and fuzzy book in a lot of ways that I wasn't expecting, but it also did hurt. It did hurt because we are dealing with a terminal illness, and that terminal illness does reach a terminus that isn't fun. But it was very powerful and very real, and I appreciated that for all that it hurt me. Okay, then we're almost done. Just a few books left. The last book that I have as a 5-star read, I actually just finally got my copy, it took forever, was Kiss the Villain by Rena Kent. And I know there's always lots of discourse about her books, but one of the things I wanted to remind people of too, who are feeling either extra spicy about this or are finding people's reactions to be disgusting about it, which I do too in some ways, you're absolutely fine not liking this type of dark, twisted, unhealthy, toxic relationship. But to say the only reason you don't like it is because it's MM and we shouldn't represent relationship that way, like, I honestly just think it's ridiculous. I talk in depth about this in my last weekly wrap up, just about how I think people are sidestepping what they don't like. Like, it's fine to not want to read gay romance. If you don't want to, don't. But don't say that this book is inherently bad because of that. There are plenty of reasons to have problems with Rena Kent's writing. As always, I'm the first one to raise my hand. I haven't liked books by her before I read God of Malice. I just know when I'm going into her that it is going to make me uncomfortable and that it's going to be crazy, and that's what this was. And so this was Caden, who is a law professor, as well as part of other things. And then we have Gareth, jeez, it just went out of my head, who is actually Killian's older brother. And they're both vicious, naughty men. And they end up in this crazy toxic relationship in the beginning. And I mean, it's still kind of toxic by the end too, but it is wild and twisted and a great time. But the thing I want to remind people, that's what I want to say, is that everyone is so surprised at people's reaction to this, you know, being MM and being like, oh, that's so disgusting. People reacted the same way about God of Fury, okay? When people found out that was going to be MM, they were like, stay in your lane, Rena Kent. We don't want to read this. You write MF. Why are you doing this? They're, you know, again, sure, showing their preference for what they want to read, but it's also coming across very homophobic. And if you don't want to read it, don't. It's when you say it out loud that you show what your true feelings are, right? And that's weird and uncomfortable for everyone. And you just look bad. Like, it's fine to say, I'm uncomfortable with how she writes this type of story. I'm going to move on. I don't want to read MM. I'm going to wait till she writes another MM. Like, just do that. Okay? Okay. I gave this 5 stars though. I do like God of Fury better, as I think a lot of people do. There are a lot of echoes to God of Fury in here, and particularly because Nikolai is, like, people are saying this one is a cross between God of Malice and God of Fury, and it really is, particularly because Nikolai and Killian are both pretty prominent in this one, being so close to Gareth, and also, like, Gareth is similar to Killian in more ways than you maybe think when you read God of Malice. And Nikolai and Gareth are able to connect with them both having kind of, well, Nikolai was always like bisexual, but or fluid more kind of, but he never really saw himself in like a relationship period. He just was a slut, and he would tell you he was a slut. I'm not being diminutive to him. So that is kind of where we are with this one. But I will be rereading this one in April, actually, because one of my patrons wants it annotated. And I'm very intrigued to revisit it again already and see how I feel now when I get to analyze it and highlight it and everything. Okay, we have just 2 books left to talk about, and we are well over time here with these. And so I won't say too much because I've already gushed about these ones quite a bit because they're my 6-star reads so far this year. So as I was saying, I really, really try not to just gut reaction give my favorite authors 6 stars, but then they write me a book like this and I just can't help it. So By the Letter was a 6-star read for me, and I've gotten a little spicy with a few people in my comments who are telling me that this is not a good book and that I'm wrong and that it was boring, or they didn't feel the connection, or the heroine was too much of a pushover, or blah 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 blah. I don't want to hear it in my comments. I'm sorry. This is a signal for you guys, and people want to get spicy. Like, I thought we were able to say what we want. You can, but don't be a dick, okay? Like, if I give a book 6 stars and I say that, maybe don't say it's trash and that I led you astray with my recommendation, okay? We're not all going to like the same things. So how is it me leading you astray, giving you this and you didn't like it? That's not my fault that your taste doesn't match mine, okay? A lot of you who watch, your taste does match mine. And so you want to know what I like. That doesn't mean we're going to hit 100 for 100. And this one did stretch me. And I wasn't sure how I was going to rate this one until probably the last 20%, where sometimes I read her books and I'm like, I know what I'm feeling, Because this one is an accidental pregnancy by a stranger, and stranger turns out to be the man trying to take over her company, okay? This is Shira and Roman is like a takeover king, basically, okay? He's got a little bit of Tristan happening in him. He's an ex-rugby player. His twin actually still plays rugby, and he takes over businesses and tries to make them profitable. And he actually had a connection to Shira's dead husband, who is a much older than her. And so Roman has kind of some bad thoughts about her that have been put in his head, not only because he sees the state of the business and is like, how did you let this mess happen? But also Shira's stepdaughter has said horrible things to Roman about her, and he's kind of let himself believe a lot of the things she's said. And when he comes in and starts taking over this business, and again, this is after Shira and him had a one-night stand at a sex club where they wore masks. See the pretty masks here. And so in the midst of her business being taken out from under her, she also is finding out she's pregnant, and then finding out that Roman was actually the father. So there is a lot of things. Roman messes up a lot in the beginning. He very quickly jumps to some conclusions. He doesn't think it through or take his time. But the same way that he jumps to conclusions in a bad way, he is very good at 2 things. One, jumping all in when he finds out he's going to be a dad, and getting his brothers involved, which, by the way, yes, after the Mile High Billionaires, we will be getting a spinoff about Roman's brothers, which is why they're pretty prominent in this book. He has great brothers in here. And he jumps all in that way. He also is willing to grovel and work as hard as he can to earn her forgiveness and to earn a spot in her life and in their child's life together. So absolutely love it. I love them so, so much. And this was a 6-star read, and I can't wait to reread it, which I actually have to reread it this week because this is supposed to be annotated for March. So I'm going to be rereading it. And then the last 6-star was honestly a big surprise to me. And it was another one that the 6-star rating just popped into me right at the end. And I did just speak about this one in my last weekly wrap up. So to keep this under 90 minutes, I'll wrap it up. But my final 6-star read and the last one in this ranking is The Girlfriend Zone by Lauren Blakely. And this book just truly touched me. the heroine has partial hearing loss. She wears hearing aids. She's very self-conscious about them. She's also a photographer. Her father is a hockey coach, and she actually meets one of her father's players at his grandmother's coffee shop, and they end up they end up having a date, and they don't say what their job is during the first part of this date, and it isn't until they've actually already had sex and are like having a second date together that they finally share who they are, because he actually invites her to his home. He's going to cook a meal for her, and she starts seeing his hockey stuff on the walls, and then has a horrid realization that this is her father's beloved player. Actually, like, her father really cares about him, and this cannot happen. And so these two now are forced to kind of end it before any more happens. And now we spend the next good amount of time of them like trying to figure out their relationship. She ends up working for the team for photos, and they build this beautiful friendship. And the thing that pushes this over the edge, as I'll say that I won't spoil though, is there is a gesture that the hero actually begins very early on in the story that we find out about at the end. And so it changed my whole perspective of the book. And I thought Lauren Blakely did that so well, because it now made these certain little moments of things he was doing throughout the whole thing click together, that that's what he was doing without any expectation that they would be together. He does that as a friend, that I was like, that's it, man. He's the one. He's the one we love. So it popped into a 6-star for me, right? It just did. That kind of gesture and proving what a good guy he is. And there's no third act breakup. There is like, it's a slow, like, you know, they have a one night stand, but then it's a very slow build, and they are friends for so long, and they build such a good relationship. So once they finally get together, we're not really fearful that it's all going to fall apart or anything, right? So I did not expect this to be an hour and a half, right? I wanted to wait this time until I had more to talk about, because the last 2 times I've done like 30 books, but this is why I don't wait until I have over 40, because we're here for an hour and a half. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found some new books to read based on these. Let me know some of your favorite recent releases, or some ones that you DNF'd. Remember, if it's one that I gave a high, you know, baby, just be nice. You could say you DNF'd it and that it didn't vibe with you, but be gentle with me, okay? If I rated it 6 stars particularly, be gentle with me, okay? Okay? That's all right. We discover we're sensitive in different ways, and I'm a tough chick. I can say I can handle it, but when you go after Roman and Shira, you're stabbing me in the heart. Okay, we got to be careful about that, okay? Just be nice to me, okay? All right, thank you so much for watching, friends. I love you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for spending some time with me chatting about books. It really will help if you like this video. Comment, like I said, about a book that you loved, and we'll see you next time. Bye.